Well, good afternoon, listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Lament of Hope podcast. Always a gift. I have a very interesting interviewee today. I was researching memoirs because I love to read memoirs, and I came across Tamara. Did I say it right? Yes, she's
Yes.
nodding. I'm giving myself a pat. Tamara Mathieu, and she wrote a memoir about her time in the 12 tribes, which is, I actually live down the road from a restaurant that is owned by the 12 tribes, and they have a community down there as well. And I've spoken with them a few times, but I really didn't know much about what they believe, what their community is like. I mean, my short interactions with them, they've been very kind people. And I was like, I'd love to learn more about it because it sounds Jewish, sounds kind of Christian, crossover, not really sure what this is. And then I came across her memoir, All Who Believed, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I want to talk with her and get her experience because she was there. And obviously it's going to be her perspective, but I'm really intrigued, and I think it'd be really interesting for my audience as well. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, you wrote this memoir. It's like it was in 2024, so it was a year ago that it was published.
hmm
Since publishing it, have you regretted publishing it? Have you increased in like your resolve that this was a good thing to do, or how do you feel about the response that you've had from the book?
I feel really good about the response. I was a little nervous publishing it, just not knowing how it would be received, not so much from the 12 tribes themselves, but and maybe from other people that came out of the group or things like that. But the feedback that I've gotten has been so positive and supportive. I would say, especially from other ex members. I've
Okay.
had a lot of them reach out to me and appreciate my book and that I wrote it, and also just appreciating that I just really tried to stay true to the story. I didn't in any way want to misrepresent or embellish, or just sensationalize my experience because I know people want the nitty gritty. People want to know like about, was there abuse? Was there drug use? There's all these, kind of outlandish rumors but
Yeah.
it's like the truth just speaks to itself. Like I really wanted to just make sure that I was telling my truth and keeping it at my story because there are a lot worse stories. There are a lot of people that were raised there and went through terrible things. There were so many worse situations than what I ever experienced. And I never wanted to take away from that. And I also didn't want to get into telling other people's stories. Like if they ever want to, you know, put their story out there, like that's their choice. So like
Yeah.
I keep it to what it was like for me as a wife, as a mother, as a woman in this group. Like this is why I joined. This is what my day to day life was like, and
Yeah.
really try to keep it at that. And then I've also been reached out to by people that have family members, people that have children that have joined. I've been in touch with mothers, so that has been nice to be able to connect with people. And one woman described me as her translator. Like she'll email me and be like, "I got a letter from my son, and this is what it says, and what do you think this means? And are they telling him to say this?" And I'm kind of able to help her a little bit, have more understanding, like of what her, how to still interact with her son, be supportive of him, things like that. So I've had a lot of good opportunities come through publishing the book.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what's so unique about individual stories is like they don't copycat. Like maybe there are things that cross over, but it is your experience. So how someone else would
Mhm.
see it or do it, is going to have some nuances, but you're just telling it as you experienced it, and that's what I think makes
Mhm.
memoirs super amazing, interesting. That's why I love them. Um
Mhm.
I was going to ask you, so just to kind of set up the scenario for my listeners, had you heard of the 12 tribes before joining it, or how did you come across the 12 tribes? Because I had never heard of them until I'd moved into this area. Because I used to live in Philadelphia, near Philly,
Mm-hmm.
never heard of them. And then I came
Yep.
to Virginia in Loudoun County, and it was my first time experiencing
Okay.
coming up to a community and it said 12 tribes and I was like, what is that? And then I, walked in and the individuals looked a little bit like Amish Mennonite but not really. And then
Hippie, like
yeah, it
it's
was like a crossover and
yeah.
there were super nice people, but it was
Yep.
also like
Yep.
and then they were closed on a certain days in the store that I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. This wouldn't be the day that it was closed typically at other stores." But it was just and they had their own community, like everything was they had their own, and I was like, wow, I've never heard of this before. So I just wondered for you, like, how did you come across the group, and then what gave you the desire to want to join and like be part of that?
So Vermont was a place where they migrated to in pretty large numbers back in the early 80s. So Island Pond, Vermont, it had a substantial number of people back in the early 80s. And my husband's aunt joined the 12 tribes in 1981.
Oh wow.
I met my husband in college. So he grew up from the age of, 5 or knowing about the 12 tribes because his aunt lived there and they would visit her from time to time. Um, he had a couple of cousins that, well, when she moved in, it was with her family, her husband, her two boys. Her husband eventually left, took the boys. She stayed. Husband never went back. The two boys went back on their own volition
Oh,
as teenagers,
okay.
and then they married, had families in the group. So that then I met my husband in college, and that's how I got to know the group. It was one of his cousins was coming up for a visit, and so we were invited to go down to my future in-laws house to meet them. That was my very first interaction. I met his aunt and his cousin and his cousin's wife, and you know, they, I just, I was curious. I knew that they were part of a group, and kind of asked my husband, logistical questions about like, well, what do you mean they all live together? Like, just wanting to know. And he didn't, at the time, he's like, yeah, I don't, I've been there and visited, and I
Yeah.
don't know. He didn't really know a lot. And I wasn't that interested at that point. Like, I was very newly pregnant with my first child, and we were planning on getting married the following summer. So sometime between then and when we got married, my in-laws, who were very much they were very much into their church. They were Pentecostals, and they had stopped going to church. And my mother-in-law told me that they were going over to the 12 Tribes community in Rutland to their Friday night celebrations
Hmm.
instead of going to church. And that kind of I paid attention to that because I knew how much their faith meant to them. So I thought, wow, like if they're looking into something else, like that really must be, something worthy to look into.
Yeah.
So then I got a little bit more curious, like, well, what do you mean Friday night? What's that? And she described it to me, and it sounded so fun. So the week before our wedding, I was with her and we went to Rutland, and we went to Party City. We were, it was pretty low budget wedding. I was decorating my own reception hall with my mother-in-law the day before. and I kind of spur of the moment was like, hey, I want to see what the 12 tribes household looks like. Could we stop by? Could you? She was like, oh, absolutely. So we just showed up. They weren't expecting us, so we just showed up in the middle of the day, just her and I, and my 3-month-old baby. And it was a really just memorable experience for me. The way they welcomed us in, it was like we were old friends. They, right away had tea, had cookies, had somebody to host us and to sit with us and chat. And I was sitting with these teenage girls that just really impressed me. They were so mature. And, one of them got up and was just playing the piano, and it was so beautiful. And then all of a sudden, this group of children, probably ages like 8 to 10 or 11, come out. And, oh, these children have a song they want to sing for you guys. And they sang this nice song about how, happy children are obedient to their parents. I just remember thinking, like, what kind of children like come out and sing something like this, and
Yeah.
I have a new baby, and I'm also, all of a sudden a woman comes out who's around my age, and she also has a new baby. And I remember thinking, like, wow, she's really lucky. She lives in this communal setting with all these women, like a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
It was her first baby, too. And like, I was just alone in my house, like trying to figure things out and not really knowing what I was doing. And it was a really insecure time for me. It was also, I mentioned this in my book, it was right around the Columbine shooting. That was like the first big,
Yeah.
nationally broadcast like live school shooting. And I started to think, what kind of life do I want for my child? I want something safe. I want a good life for my child. I don't want to send them to school and have to worry that they're going to get shot. And
Yeah.
so that I really started to just take interest in the lifestyle aspect of the community. I was That's what drew me at first. Their lifestyle was simple and wholesome and natural, and I liked that. I
Yeah.
liked that people weren't just sacked out on video games all day. You know, I just liked that wholesome Little House on the Prairie kind of vibe. I just
Yeah. No, that's how I
it
felt
was
too.
very
Yeah.
it was very appealing to me, like farming and animals, and women sewing clothes with their daughters. It just seemed really beautiful. And so I started to just desire to know more about it and started fantasizing, like, what would it be like to live there? And we started after we got married, we started visiting more and more.
And your husband was like excited and happy to do that, or was it kind of like he came along because you wanted to, or?
Yeah, absolutely. He came along because I wanted to. I feel like he didn't see the harm in it, that he wanted me to be a Christian. Like, he was also very much involved in his family's church growing up, and he really wanted me to take on Christianity and maybe go to church. And this was like more than he bargained for, because we were doing very well for our age. We'd already bought a house, and he had a really good full-time job, and I was staying home with my child. It was like, to the outside appearances, we had it made. Like, our life was good. Nobody could understand, like, what why in the world would I want to give up what we had. But I felt like I was seeing something so much better. I was like looking into the long range. I was looking at those teenagers that
Yeah.
just, seemed so innocent and pure and respectful, and like, yes, like, that's what I want my children to be like.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, I mean, did you have yourself, like I know you mentioned you have a good relationship, it seems like with your in-laws, or did. Do you like did you have close family of your own on your own side, or was it more of you were closer to your husband's parents?
No, I had close relatives on my side.
Okay,
My
so you
story
had a
gets
good
very,
family unit.
yeah. I mean, my
Yeah.
parents are divorced. There's that. But yeah, I mean, I saw my parents, my siblings. I have three sisters, three brothers. Like, I saw everybody regularly. My grandparents at that time. Just, I had aunts and uncles I was close to. Yeah, I definitely did have, like, a family unit. So it wasn't just because I, like, was estranged or something from my family that made me want to do this, but I I did want, just something different for my child, not necessarily like um, just something different from society as a whole, not just specifically different from what how I was raised, but just
Yeah.
I just saw like a better version of society. Like I really liked what I saw. I really liked the fellowship, the community, the sharing, the that kind of aspect
Yeah.
that the
Well,
12 tribes offered. There was homeschooling. They had their own, like school system set up. That appealed to me, to not have to send my child to public school, but I didn't know if I had it in myself to be a homeschooler. But the 12 tribes has their own schoolings. Not I really
yeah.
never taught my own children in the 12 tribes. They would go off every day, with their little groups of maybe like 3 to 6 other children, and that was their schooling.
Well, it sounds like it was really the communal spirit of it, and
Mm-hmm.
the seeming like very like a contentness, a happiness, whereas in society here, when you're outside of that, it also like we don't the world is very attack mode, everyone's on
Mm-hmm.
guard. You're not looking out for each other. That's not the mantra. That's what we say the mantra is, but that's just not the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Um so when for you is it like I actually want to join? Like I want to leave my home that I'm in. Like you were saying, you had people looking in and be like, "Well, you have a lot of things that, a young couple wouldn't have." But you wanted
Right.
to give that up and go into the 12 tribes. What was the decision factor for you? Where it's like, actually, it's not enough that we're visiting this. I want to be a part of it. I want to go.
Well, you know, I of course started to really consider the beliefs. And as much as I had wanted to just appease my husband and be like, okay, yeah, I believe in Jesus. I'll be a Christian. It just never really like drew me.
Right.
I went to church with his family one time, and I wasn't the next day just like couldn't stop thinking about it. Was really excited, wanted to, what was that song you guys sang? Like there wasn't that excitement in me about it, but
Yeah.
there was about the 12 tribes. And I thought, well, maybe this is God showing me, he knows do have this desire for something, and if something is the truth, then it should elicit that type of response. And because it was, that fed it more. And I never could understand why God would send people to hell for not believing in Jesus, especially people that, they might grow up in like some small village in China and never in their life hear of Jesus.
Right.
And I
Okay.
could never figure out why would they go to hell. That doesn't make any sense. I could not wrap my brain around that. Then I remember reading a 12 tribes article called The Three Eternal Destinies, and it's about, in the book of Revelations, there's three very specific categories. There's the holy people, like the people that are set apart by God to bring about the end of the age and rule over the nations, and that's who the 12 tribes think they are. Then there's the righteous people of the world, and those are the people who lived according to their conscience. And those
Okay.
people are not going to go to the lake of fire. They're going to pay for their sins in death, and then they're going to go on to live eternally, being ruled over by the holy. And then there's the unjust and filthy, and that's who you typically think of as the bad people that are going to hell.
Okay.
So when I read this Three Eternal Destinies, and it made room for the good people of the world that just were normal people and raised their families and did the best they could. And that, oh, okay, those people, they're not going to go to hell if they didn't believe in Jesus. Like that sat well in me. I'm like, okay, I can believe this, and this is actually in the Bible, that they're not, they didn't just make this up. It wasn't until years and years later in the 12 tribes that I realized that there are the two eternal destinies in the 12 tribes. And meaning that once you're baptized and you've accepted the truth, then you only have two eternal destinies.
Okay.
Because now that you know the truth, you can't deny it, decide, I'm going to go back out and live my life in the world and obey my conscience and be part of the righteous. You don't have that option anymore. You knew the truth and denied it. So now your only option is the lake of fire. And for
Okay.
anybody born and raised in the 12 tribes, so for the children, they also do not get the option to grow up and leave and be a righteous person in the world. They would automatically go to the lake of fire. And
Okay.
I just remember feeling like I was ripped off. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. I didn't realize that that's how it worked. That like once you were there, then you were trapped in that same old system of, well, if you don't believe like we do, then you're going to hell. Like I didn't really, took me a
Yeah.
while to catch on to that snake in the grass.
Yeah. But you saw this and then you told your husband would know about this and he like, "Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and join because there was also you
It
wanted
took
to
a
be."
while. Like it took a year and a half of us visiting together,
Okay.
a lot of conversations, things like that. And then we spent 2 weeks in Hyannis in the June of 2000. And then we went home and sold our house and sold everything we had. And we moved back into Hyannis like mid August.
And Hyannis is that the name of the community or the town where?
It's in Hyannis, Massachusetts.
Oh,
It
Massachusetts.
was
Okay.
there's a 12 tribes group there, and that's where we visited a lot because that's where his family were living at that time.
Okay. So your in-laws must have
But
been
we got
really
to know him.
happy, I would
Huh?
think. Were your in-laws like really happy
Who?
about it? Your in-laws?
Oh, I mean, yeah, they weren't part of the 12 tribes at that point. Um, so I think it was kind of shocking to them that we were like really going to do this.
Okay, so they just
But
attended the
yeah, I mean,
services.
but they were fine with it. My family wasn't. They were like, "What are you guys doing?" And I see that more now. Now I have grandchildren of my own, and I think, oh my, what if? Can't imagine. What if they took my grandkids and I didn't really realize at the time. I just really thought I was making the best decision to provide this wonderful alternative lifestyle for my child.
Yeah. No. It sounds like it to me if I heard something where there's this communal place where people are really nice to each other and it sounds great. Um
Mm-hmm.
did you so you move there and what
Yep.
tell me what is it like like do you live with other people? Do you have your own place? How does it work?
Yeah, no, no, it's all communal. Like
Okay.
the 12 tribes, they all live together in households. Like you said, you live near Hillsborough.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
that the community in Virginia? Okay, so we
Yeah.
visited there one time. So I've been to that household. But like, yeah, for the most part, people are going to live in a big house with several other families.
Okay.
But there's a lot of alternative arrangements to that as well. Like in Asheville, North Carolina, I remember there were yurts. So a family might have their own yurt. That's kind of their own space more so than being in a household. When Cambridge was very full, we had people living in tents. There was like a little tent community set up in the woods. Just there were a lot of odd living arrangements because people didn't get turned away, and we were always making room, and people were moving there, and so. But for the most part, um, yeah, I lived in a household, and it was very common that you were sharing bathroom with three or four other families. Your children's bedroom was right next door to somebody else's children's bedroom, and you come out of your room in your bathrobe, and somebody else's husband was coming out in their bathroom. I mean, you really were just all together all the time.
Did you know that it would be that close
So,
going in? Or like did you
yeah, because
know?
we
Yeah.
stayed there. We were guests. We stayed
Okay.
in the household, so I totally knew that was gonna be part of life. But I liked that. I liked having other people around.
Yeah. This is like a big family.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
that's what I
then
thought it was going to be.
so tell me what was your daily life like? Like if someone said what were you
So,
doing every day? What would you say?
yeah, I was mainly in the kitchen with my child. training him how to be obedient to me. And yeah, that was my main day to day. If I wasn't cooking in the kitchen, then I would be doing laundry. So we all had a laundry day, and most women had at least one, sometimes two or three single men that they did laundry for. Um, because most
Okay.
communities, for some reason, have a lot of single men, way more single men than single women.
Hmm.
So the single men were connected to a family, and then the wife of that family was in charge of his laundry. So I think I had three brothers, and then like the fewer children you have, they're not going to give a woman with six children three brothers laundry. So like, I only had one child. So I was given three brothers laundry. So when, I had a
Okay.
whole day to do laundry for my family and for three men. And then, chores in the house. I was given a bathroom that, and you're expected to do that every day. And that's basically what the women's daily schedule consisted of was cleaning and laundry and cooking meals, and once you're given more responsibility, then there's a woman who covers the kitchen. So she's responsible to plan the menus and order the food. And then there's a woman that's in charge of personal needs. So you need whatever. You
Okay.
give your family's needs list to the needs shopper, and there was a shopping day, and the kitchen covering and the personal needs person would be gone the whole day. And they would go to thrift stores and grocery stores, and so that happened once a week. But
What was your husband doing? Was he still able to keep his job and work, or was
oh
it
no,
no?
you don't have any outside work. You don't earn your own money. So when we first joined, it's like they want people to start at the bottom. So we were brand new disciples, even though my husband had a degree and he was a software engineer.
Wow.
He was
Okay.
put washing dishes in the cafe of the hyannis basement. It's
Okay.
like our father has to raise you up. Nobody's going to come into the 12 tribes day one and have all this status just because of how they functioned in the world. Because
Okay.
that doesn't matter anymore. Like we died to our old life. That was our feudal, selfish life in the world. So
Okay.
you're reborn, you're a brand new baby when you come into the community.
Okay.
Um,
So having a
so
cafe is pretty typical for the
yeah,
12 tribes. They have a
that
cafe.
not every place had them, but they all want them. That's like a goal that every place would have a cafe because it's an outreach. It's
I
an
see.
easy outreach to get people to come in. And like you said, you walk in and you notice, oh, this something's different here. These people don't look like
Yeah.
everybody else, and the decor, and it naturally makes you start to ask questions like, hey, are you guys some part of group? And and that's the goal. They're not like the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Mormons that there's no like door to door evangelizing. It's because of their life and the types of things they do,
Yeah.
they it causes people on their own volition. So I don't know that you would ever describe the 12 tribes as like pushy or trying to push their agenda because they don't have to.
Right.
There's a natural curiosity. So yes, the goal for pretty much any community is to have some type of outreach like that. I think in Hillsborough, isn't there like a farm stand where they sell like
It's a
their vegetables
cafe.
and baked goods? And I think it started though way back when as like a farm stand.
Oh, okay. Well,
And then
it's
maybe
bigger
like,
now. Yeah. It's a
yeah,
whole restaurant. Yeah.
right. Yeah, so that's definitely the goal. It draws people, or they go to concerts and they dance, and they have these buses, these beautiful buses that get people's attention. So yeah, he was doing dishes in the cafe basement, but not for too long because I think they did realize that you know he he had a lot of gifts, he had a lot of knowledge, and they needed that. It's not often that people join the 12 tribes who have a lot of like tangible skills. There's a lot of like really needy people that come in.
Yeah.
So We were told before like that we were like anomalies, that even people there were like, why are these people joining? Like, because we did just seem to, you know, I don't know, have our life together. So that's what he was doing. And then he got I don't want to say promoted, but he got directed to one of their little town construction crews. So they just had like this odd job crew, and they were painting a florist shop at the time. And so he got out of the cafe basement, and then he was going out on this job every day with a few of the other men to this florist that they were painting. And he did this odd job crew for a while. And then there was this big event in Washington, D.C. I don't know how the 12 tribes pulled this off, but they literally like rented out the mall of Washington, D.C. And
Oh
they
wow.
had this, they did it for 3 years in a row. They had this whole extravaganza where every single tribe, all the different geographical locations around the world, they all planned this huge event. Every tribe had like all these tents and photo galleries, and they had plays, and they had their mobile cafe, and they had this huge, like, it was like a 3 or 4 day long event.
Hmm.
Um,
Why?
and so
Just
just for evangelism,
oh, people
just,
would could
if
come
they
to the event?
Oh yeah, and
Okay.
they thought that like millions of people were going to come pouring into the 12 tribes as a result of these events, because it was on the Washington D.C. Mall. Like, what greater exposure, you know what I mean? They'd have thousands of people a day going through their event.
Yeah.
Anyway, so because of that, my husband got in pulled into like printing posters and writing, printing literature, and, designing pamphlets and all, kind of technical stuff. And,
Okay.
from then on out, they realized that he could do a lot that not many people there could do. And he started to be head of several different industries. Like, first, it was the tribal trading, the mate factor, the tea that the 12 tribes drinks. They have their own brand, the Mate Factor. And he got that up and running in Rutland. And then we got moved to Cambridge, and they wanted him to take on the soap shop industry and get that up and going. And then that's what he did for the last 11 years, was manage the Common Sense Farm soap and body care industry.
So is that how the community makes money? Is through these different outlets?
Yeah, every community has their own
Okay.
cottage industry, they call
Okay.
it, to support themselves. They want every community to be autonomous and support themselves. But it often, there's communities in like Brazil, places like that would be really poor. So
Yeah.
it was very common for a community that was wealthier, that had an industry that made a lot of money, to be sending out money to some of the poorer places to help support them.
Hmm. Okay. So I want to ask just like so if you're let's say you're, going about your day, um and would you be able to like if you wanted to sit down and read a book, could you read a book? Like were you able to were you able to were you allowed to read any book you wanted? Was there any sort of rule on your time? Like could you like relax and do something you enjoyed or no?
No,
Okay.
no. And we weren't allowed to read any outside literature. So, I mean, maybe you'd be reading your Bible, but there were 2 times a day called preparation time. And that was your time to like read your Bible and prepare for the gatherings. Because we had 2 gatherings a day. There was a gathering in the morning and a gathering in the evening. And the hour beforehand was your time to sit with your family and read from the Bible. And we called it preparation time, to prepare for the gathering. But no, during the day, pretty much your every moment was accounted for. You wouldn't just, you know, relax in the middle of the day without getting covered. You might go to someone and say, "Hey, I have a bad headache. I was hoping to just lay down for an hour." And somebody would give you permission to do that.
Okay.
because we all had a busy schedule.
Sure.
So if it was your lunch day, you're making lunch for 50, 60 people. It's not a like go in the kitchen at 11 and put out
Yeah.
some sandwich stuff, okay? So you were in, as soon as breakfast cleanup was done, you would be out there 9 o'clock in the morning getting going. You might have been up late the night before prepping something for lunch to make it a little bit easier. You know, you might have been up late washing all your lettuce for the salad. So at least that part is done. Because unless you had older children who were in training or you were a single woman, you know, you might have two or three little toddlers with you also while you're making lunch for 60 people.
Right.
So it was, yeah, it was very, very hard. It was very hard. So yeah, lunch would take about 3 hours to make. And then it was getting it all out,
And it was
eating,
just
you know,
you.
huge,
Just one person would do
no,
the
no,
lunch.
not in a household that size.
Okay.
So if you were feeding lunch for that many people, you would have two women.
Okay.
I and I mostly lived in big houses. There were times there was a downtown house in Cambridge that was smaller than the main house, and then you might only be making lunch for 20 or 25 people. And I say only because that seemed easy. And then you could do it by yourself. You could do that by yourself. You could make lunch for 20, 25 people by yourself
Wow.
with your children, because by the time my son was 6 he could wash all the lettuce for the salad. I could put all the ingredients for chili in front of him, and he could do it himself. Like, you were really raising your children to take on take on work and to be able to work. By the time my older daughter was 11, she could make gallons of like the best roasted garlic parmesan dressing you ever had. Like, women would come to me and be like, "Can your daughter make my dressing?" Like, she was so good at it. She could make, 12 gallons of yogurt for the, for a breakfast morning. Like, the
Right.
children are raised in that. So you really start to rely upon like your pretty young children to start carrying their fair share of the burden, um, because that's what they're expected to do in the kitchen. Like, we did not show up in the kitchen with crayons and Play-Doh and toys and, you guys play over there while we get lunch made. No, you were expected the entire time to be giving your children a productive will. They were never supposed to just be doing their own thing or whining or wanting to go outside. Or it was, you had a plan. Okay, you're going to sit here and peel carrots, you're going to stand over here at the sink and pre-wash, you're going to do this. And the whole time you had to be on top of giving your children a job. And anytime any of the children whined or jumped down and took off and they weren't supposed to, or got distracted with another child walking through, then you had to stop what you were doing and you had to take them out to your bedroom, to the bathroom, whatever was closest, and you had to discipline them for not being obedient. And if
So
you didn't, then you'd
even
have somebody like, "Hey, you need to discipline you just told them to stop banging that peeler on the table and they didn't listen to you. You need to go discipline them." So
so
there was
even if
that aspect.
they're so even if they're one or like two, I mean, how are they gonna
Oh yeah.
know? Okay.
Oh well.
Like how would they know how
Um,
to peel a carrot? I mean, how are you gonna you'd have to actually
you sit
stand
them in the
over
high
them and
chair. You sit them in
okay.
their high chair, and I mean, I probably wouldn't have given my 1 year old a peeler like that sharp. So for a 1 year old, I might have them on a back carrier for most of that time. They would be
Wow.
on your back.
Okay.
Yeah. Or they'd
Wow.
sit in their high chair. And a child that young, of course, they're not going to be able to be as productive or productive at all. So maybe you do just like give them some Cheerios, or, you know, if they're really little, 7, 8 months. I do remember one time there was a playpen in the kitchen, but it was just for those babies of 7, 8 months old
Yeah, so
who
your play
couldn't
years
really
are
help out.
pretty yeah.
Yeah, so we'd put like the measuring cup bin in the playpen, and the baby could play. And
Learn
but
how to measure.
and we didn't even say play. They worked with them. So, but yeah, once your child was old enough to start learning a task, maybe they're 2 years old and they can take a butter knife And even if they were doing something irrelevant, it didn't matter. It just had to be a task. Okay, here's a banana. I'm going to peel it. It's soft. You can take this knife and you can cut this banana up into little pieces, and then take all these pieces and you could teach. We were supposed to be teaching them, why don't you put three pieces in this? Like everything, you were supposed to kind of have a little educational thing going on. As long as they were doing something that you told them to do, you know, there were little brooms, little mops. So a little child could be like sweeping, or you could give them, here, take this wet washcloth, and I want you to go around and just wipe down all the walls. Or here's this, children love spray bottles. Here's a spray bottle and a washcloth,
Yeah.
I want you to wipe down the refrigerator. It was like any task that you could give them that would keep them occupied for a little bit. That's what you had to do the whole time. If it did come down to the nitty gritty and your child had been really being good, helping you out, maybe you could give them a little bit of, here's a piece of paper, and here's a pen. Why don't you practice writing your name? It just they always had to be under our authority. They always had to be doing something we told them to do. They
Right.
weren't supposed to be desiring their own will, or they would be disciplined.
Right. Or learning some sort of autonomy of their own. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How
Yep.
did when did the rose-colored glasses for you kind of fade? Because you were there a long time.
Oh, they faded fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, within I guess it would have been right after Thanksgiving. So we moved in August. My husband got baptized like 6 or 7 weeks later, and I was baptized like right after him, because I was like, oh hell no, like he's baptized, like I'm the one that wanted to come, and he's baptized first. And so I just like ripped off the band-aid. I got baptized, and it was probably maybe a month after, maybe a month and a half after that, I just plummeted. But I,
Yeah.
I, I became pregnant again. So I had all those newly pregnant hormones flowing through me. I was very homesick. We'd given up our dog to move into the community. I would just think of my dog and start crying. I would think of my family. Christmas was coming. Like I said, I had 6 younger siblings, and I wasn't going to be there at Christmas. They weren't going to get any presents from me. And I was the oldest. I really just started to feel like, what did we do? What did we, I'd lay in bed and just like, okay, I'm going to open my eyes and I'll be home. Like, I just really started missing my friends. Just, yeah, totally doubting what we had chosen to do. But whenever I would talk to somebody, they were always so reassuring, and like, this is just the evil one whispering in your ear. And anytime somebody, decides to give up their life and serve our Father, you're going to have opposition from the evil one. This is so normal. Our Father loves you. You've made a wonderful, all this, encouragement to help you overcome. But anyways, I plummeted. I started spiraling, and I think in order to maybe give us like a little boost of encouragement, they decided to send us to Rutland, to the community in Rutland for Thanksgiving weekend. So remember I said how my husband had a cousin and his wife, and she'd had a baby.
Yeah.
We visited them in Hyannis. Well, when we moved into Hyannis, that family had already moved to a different community. That happens a lot, people moving around. So they'd gone to Rutland. We hadn't seen them yet. So I think just to like boost my spirits a little bit, give us a weekend away, we're going to send you guys to Rutland. And I was super excited. And so we had a great weekend in Rutland. It was really nice. See everybody, even like my mom. I hadn't seen my mom yet. She came down to Rutland. My sister and brother were like 7 and 10 at the time. They came to Friday night. I danced with my sister and brother. They had a great time. I started to feel better. Like, okay, maybe we did do the right thing. Like, it's all going to be okay. And I haven't seen any of my dad's side of the family also since we joined, and they live in the White River Junction area. So we got covered on the way home to stop and visit some of my relatives. And then that's what did it for me. I was over at my aunt's house, and she's putting up her Christmas decorations, and it just really hit me. Like, we were now in like a whole different world. And I did not want to go back. I really did not want to go back. I didn't want to get in that car and drive back to Hyannis, but I did. And by the time we got back, I was just a mess. And I was trying to wean my son at night because I was still nursing him even though I was pregnant. And so like nighttime had to go. Like, I was so exhausted. And so the room that we lived in had this little loft in it, and somebody gave me a mattress. And so like I made my bed up in this loft, and my husband was taking on nights. So if when Emmett woke up, I was not, he quickly learned, like, I wasn't in the picture. There was no nursing, and it didn't take very long. I slept up there a few nights, and then that was that. So I just crawled up in my loft, and I just like cried myself to sleep. And then the next morning, my husband was treading really lightly. He knew that I was really upset. He didn't really know what to do. So he did the only thing that you do when you're there. You go and you get help from somebody else. So he got one of the brothers, and this was somebody that we'd gotten to know their family very well. I really liked them. They'd even come and visited us at our house in Burlington before we joined. They spent the weekend with us. They had a little girl just a little bit older than Emmett, and he was a really nice man. And so my husband must have gotten another woman to watch Emmett for a while. I just remember Andre coming in with this, his they called him Banabi. Everybody gets Hebrew names in the 12 tribes except me. My name is already Hebrew, so they didn't call me Tamara, they called me Tamara. But anyway, this man named Banabi comes in, and I was just sitting on my bed crying, and he was just looking at me, and what's going on, what's going on, and I said, I just want to go home. That's all I want. I just want to go home. And he said, you are home. And then there's that kind of hung in the air. And then I looked at my husband, and he said, you're not going anywhere. It was like that moment has always just stayed with me. Like, I literally just felt like the walls of the room were like closing in. I felt claustrophobic. I think I started to panic a little, like, what have I done? Um, and so, yeah, that was very hard. That was awful.
Was it your husband? Was the man or your husband who said you're not going home or you're not going anywhere?
It was the other, it was the man who told me that I was home when I said I just want to go home. He said, you are home.
Right.
And then it was my husband that said, no, you're not going anywhere. So yeah, I didn't have the courage at that point to put my tail between my legs and like call somebody in my family and be like, come and get me, I've had it. I did call my mother-in-law and told her that I did not like it there, and it totally freaked her out because she felt really responsible for us being there because she's kind of the one that introduced me in the first place, and then she still wasn't there. She was still living, like, you know. So, oh yeah, she felt terrible. Anyway,
Like from a
circumstance.
would you call from a communal phone or you had a
Yes, there
cell
was a
phone?
communal phone.
Okay.
No, there was. Oh, I don't think my husband had been given a cell phone at that point. If he did, it was maybe he had like a flip phone or something. Um, but no, I would call from a house. There was that house had a cordless phone that would
Okay.
reach into. I could bring it into my bedroom. Yeah, it was
So
all.
so you stayed for years and
Yeah.
with your husband and you hated
Hmm.
it and I'm my heart breaks for you cuz I can't imagine that. I mean that must have just been I guess you just kind of go numb after a while. You just go through the motions, I suppose, right? You just turn it off or how do
Well,
you
yeah, like I really felt like I want this to work. Like I still saw the good that I wanted for my child. I I don't know.
Yeah.
Circumstances changed a little bit. We ended up We ended up moving out of the house that we'd moved into, and they were building a brand new house. But in that meantime, there was no kitchen. So my circumstances quickly changed to where I had been really stressed out with a, 18, 19-month old, long, hard days in the kitchen, to suddenly we couldn't cook anymore. The meals were all being made at the cafe. So I was sent down to the cafe one day a week without Emmett, by myself, with another woman. And that was kind of nice.
Right.
I
Yeah,
kind of looked
okay.
forward to that. That was okay. And then the other days, um, I started being invited to go do some of the need shopping. So I started getting invited to go out with one of the women to go to thrift stores and look for things for people. And I loved that.
So
Like
you
I
pro
totally looked forward to
did you think it was like a
it. I think they,
phase
they started
maybe?
trying to find ways, I think, to incorporate me a little bit differently.
Okay.
Started learning how to sew and helping people with their sewing. So just things changed like that, that kind of made my day to day a little bit more tolerable.
Okay. And you were there for, you said, was it 11 years, 13 years?
14,
14.
14 years. Yep.
So when did you, what was, how did you, because obviously, I'm, it's hard because it's like I want to have people buy your book. So it's like I also don't want you to just share everything possible. But um, can you tell me what was the catalyst for leaving after that? Because after 14 years, I would almost think you'd resign yourself to it for eternity.
Yeah, I kind of had. I
Yeah.
had resigned myself to it. I had 4 children at that point. My own grandmother had moved in. So my mom's mother had moved into the 12 tribes. So, like, now I was responsible for my grandmother. My in laws lived there by then. I had all this other family, like, in the 12 tribes. I had my 4 children. I was always in the position at this point of like covering the kitchen, or, like, my husband had really risen in status. He was like a community coordinator and a leader, and he traveled to all these meetings. And so, I started being involved in midwifery. Like I think I attended 9 births
Hmm.
in my time in the 12 tribes, and like that's something that, like, who wouldn't want that? Like being on a someone's birth team was great. Like I
Yeah.
loved that.
It's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so there were things that kept me going, that made life more tolerable. Again, there was still the same hardships. And okay, so where the rubber started meeting the road was when our children were getting older. And so, you know teenagers are hard in general. It's really hard there with the strictness. It's just, there's so much oppression of their human nature and their creativity and their desire for peer relationships. And you're just constantly having to quench. So our son was not a performer. He did not just toe the line just to stay under the radar and be out of trouble. He was not like that at all. So he was already branded like an out of line child. And he was 15, and he was showing really very little desire to have his bar mitzvah. Um, just, the things that he did that were really rebellious and got him into trouble are so trivial that it just seems so silly to. But it was like he was in huge trouble for reading Tom Sawyer, and he was in huge trouble for turning on the radio in a vehicle and listening to country music. Things like that are, big trouble for playing musical instruments out in the gathering room with his friend at that age without there being an adult covering them.
But see,
It
so,
was,
so how hard for you as a parent when you don't even believe these rules?
yeah, no,
So
I know.
you're
I
like
remember
a
thinking,
you're
like,
like a medium of discipline for something where you're like I have no passion or understanding
yeah,
of why I'm doing this thing.
yes, I know, and I hated that, and I felt like my children don't even like know who I am. Like, I'm really not like this. yeah, it was, but I had resigned myself. And another thing that we did in Cambridge was there was this program. It was Woofer, WOOFER, and it was willing, or WWO, something like that. Anyways, it was willing workers on organic farms. It was this big program where people would apply to the program, and then they would have different farms all around the world where they could go to work. And so our farms were on this organization. We had a continual influx of woofers, and they came from everywhere. We had from China, from Japan, from Spain, from South America, from France, from Canada, from California. Like, so we were always living with these people that weren't part of the 12 tribes, but they lived with us and they were woofers. So one time we had four. We had four people from France, one young man and three young women. And every day they would go out and work on the farm. But, a lot of times if we needed help in the kitchen, we would ask one of them, like, hey, you want to help out with lunch today? So I started to get to know these French people, and I had taken a lot of French in high school and college, and I was like so excited to like brush up my skills a little bit. So I was always looking for opportunities to be with these
Hmm.
people and to speak French to them. And they were trying to learn English better too. And they must have been with us for a while, because I remember once they asked me if after dinner if I wanted to just like hang out with them and have some social time and like, speak French with them. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. You know, but of course, like my husband had to be willing to have all of my children after dinner, and he was often heading right back up to the soap shop because he worked like 16, 18 hours a day up there, and miraculously he covered me to spend a little time with these people. And at that point we weren't living in the huge main house. There's a house that was called the caretaker's house that was small, but small, you could still pack in like two or three families and some single people into it. So that's where we lived, and it was like a very quick couple-minute walk. So he left with my children, all went back. And I just had such a fun time. Like they were teaching me all these French phrases for things, and I was teaching, them different things in English. And I never really like we didn't really have like times like that where you're just like hanging out with people. So I was like really happy. I was like in a great mood, and I went back to our bedroom, and so like we'd started doing some lawless things in our family, because my husband had a laptop. So sometimes he'd bring the laptop home, and he downloaded all these David Attenborough, like, do you know, like the Planet Earth
Hmm.
series? Okay,
Yeah.
so he had all those downloaded. I think it came from when everybody had the chicken pox and we were like stuck in our room for days. Like that was kind of like a sanctioned thing. Like it's
Yeah.
okay if, your children watch, some of these David Attenborough, but because they didn't have anything like that, they would watch this stuff over and over and over again. So I came back, my children were all on my bed, huddled over the laptop, watching watching some Planet Earth video. And my husband, he's like, called me into my son's room, and he shut the door and he said, I just got off the phone with my brother, and I was asking him if he had any work available. So his brother um, did the same type of work that my husband did before joining the community, like software engineer type stuff.
So he'd
So
been
he's like,
thinking about leaving before,
yeah,
it
well,
sounds. Yeah.
when he said, like, I wasn't even in the when he said that, I talked to Chris, to see if he had any work available. I was like, oh, for who? Like, it didn't even, and he was like, for me. I was like, oh. So I think he'd finally gotten to the point where he was very disillusioned, and being in the leadership position he was in, he was privy to a lot of the things going on behind the scenes with different leaders and things like that. And just seeing the writing on the wall that if our son didn't like shape up, like they were probably going to get sent away.
Your
And
kids
like,
were going to get sent away?
oh yeah, kids get sent away. I mean, you wouldn't send a 15-year-old by themselves, but you would send a parent. And typically the dad would go and the mom would be expected to stay. And
What
I
would
knew
the
that that was
Well, what would they do? Where would they go? Just
like the community has so many different resources. So they might have a job somewhere and like a little apartment, that belongs to so and so's relative. And so you're
hmm.
going to send this father and son out. They're going to live in this apartment and they're going to work together on these jobs while the father is winning back the son's heart. And then once the son is surrendered and ready to go back to the community, then they'd be able to go back. So they would find an arrangement, something along those lines, to send out the fathers with their, typically boys. Not that girls didn't leave, but it was different.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
girls
guess fathers.
girls would be
I guess
more
fathers. Hmm?
I was going to just say girls would probably be more, they're more emotional, more wanting that attachment, that being pleasing to their parents, so that would
Yeah,
make
yeah. It
sense.
was rarer that a teenage girl would be sent away, but it definitely did happen. But I knew that I was not going to be one of those women that stayed in the community with the rest of my children while my husband had to go live somewhere else with Emmett. Like that just was not happening. I would
Yeah.
be I'd be packing up the rest of us too. So I think he realized, that things weren't going good, and and he always knew that you know, I was always right on that edge, like, even though I really tried, and like, I did resign myself a lot, and I did try really hard to take things on and to, do the things that I was supposed to be doing as a good community wife and mother. But yeah, I was always struggling. So anyway, that's where the end began. Was then, and it took us a while longer to leave because once people realized that we were doing bad, um, they do something, I think, just to give the people the illusion of a fresh start. So if someone's doing bad, you're like, oh, these people might leave. What happens is a lot of times the family will get moved somewhere else, far away. So we were sent to Arcadia, Florida. This was in like late June, and we're sent to Arcadia, Florida, to help the community there because it was. I mean, it was a very tiny community. It was 5 people. There were 5 people that lived in this big property in Arcadia, Florida,
And this
compared to
is
like
late
8 people.
June of 2000 and
2014, late June of 2014. We get, once everybody knows that, okay, their family is on the edge, they're thinking of leaving, they're not doing good, okay, we're gonna do this.
hmm.
So we load our entire family up in this minivan and we drive to Florida. And we were there for 6 or 7 weeks. And then my husband caught wind that they were going to send us to Rutland. And he was just like, nope, that's not happening. We're done. And we literally left in the middle, like not the middle of the night. It was like 4 in the morning. We
Wow.
packed up and drove off.
Really? You're just so you like literally sneaking out into the night. You just left.
Yeah. And, people ask, oh, why did you do that? Were they going to pop your tires? And it's like, nobody would ever physically ask you. And like, if you went to the cafe in your town and you asked them, hey, are people free to go? They would say, absolutely. People can walk out the door anytime. Like, and it's true, you could, but the social pressure of that, especially being like a leader's family, that would not have been that easy. We couldn't have just been during the day, like, hey, I'm not making lunch today because we're leaving, and go up my room and start packing everybody's stuff up. Oh man, you would have person after person, and you know, they would have gotten to us somehow. They would have pulled out all the stops. They would know who we're most connected with, and that person would come and talk to us and be crying, and our children, all their friends would be coming and making them cards and gifts, and our children would be crying, and like, I saw it happen once where a man came to get his family in broad daylight, and it was like it was so traumatic. Just like everybody's crying, it's so
Hmm.
dramatic, and
Hmm. So it's a
so
very
just to make
emotional,
it easier, yeah,
yeah,
emotional, just to
emotional
make it an easier
manipulation.
rate. Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people just pack up and leave in the middle of the night just to avoid all that, but
Yeah.
not because people were going to physically restrain us or lock us in a basement or slash our tires or cut our brake lines on the like that kind of stuff is not going to happen. Like yeah, we absolutely would have been able to pack our stuff up and drive away in the middle of the day, but it would not have been easy, and we probably would have ended up caving and not doing it.
Oh, well, it saves a couple gallons of tears, you know. Probably worth
Right.
the.
And it's just less traumatic for the children.
Yeah.
So much less traumatic for the children.
My gosh. Wow. I mean, that's. You must have. Wow. I mean, and then leaving, you probably. That. You were probably very relieved, but it's also scary having to start
It
over
was so
again.
scary. There was not a lot there was relief, but at the same time there was such a fear of the unknown. And
Yeah.
even if a situation is really hard or abusive or traumatic or whatever, familiarity is still comforting,
Oh,
even when it's
yes.
bad.
Yes.
So, when we were like living out of our van and we didn't have a job and like we had nothing, I had the thought of, oh, if we just go back to Cambridge, at least Emmett could be like mowing the lawn tomorrow and my daughter could be up milking goats and there would at least be some stability. But right, like there's just no stability when you leave like that because we had nothing. We were starting from scratch with a 15-year-old, 13, 9, and 6-year-old. Had to figure out how are we schooling them, who's going to public school, who's going to be homeschooling. We just, it was like, we were totally starting over.
Hmm.
And we were both 37 years old. I hadn't had a work history since I was 21. I hadn't finished my college degree. Like, thankfully, my husband had references because running that soap and body care industry, they ended up doing a lot of private label stuff. So they took on work from outside companies and filled product. So he had a lot of contacts that were not 12 tribes, legitimate people from other businesses who could write him referrals. So that was a bonus that a lot of people don't have. So he was able to get another job in Essex, Vermont, at another soap and body care manufacturing company because he'd been in it so long. He knew all the equipment, he knew all the lingo. It's like he came in there and they were like, wow, like, so
Hmm.
that worked in his favor for sure. But no, we like lived in a campground. Like when my two younger ones started school, I had to I had to basically go into the school and register us as a homeless family. I didn't have a mailing address. Like it was super humbling. Um,
Hmm.
we had to get food stamps and just it was very, very, very humbling. But then again, it showed my children how helpful and how good people are out here because one of the ways they manipulate in the community is really to convince you that just the world is selfish and bad and people are evil and nobody helps you. And so a lot of
Hmm.
children that raised there that they have this fear of the outside world that that it's like the bad selfish people out there.
Right.
So my children saw something so different when we came out, and I had good friends that really helped us out a lot, and my family helped us out a lot. My husband's, we had all this help, and then we go to school and the teachers it was just like help, help, help. We got
Yeah.
so many wonderful people that helped us. So I'm sure from my children's point of view, must have been like, it's not what we were told about people out here. Everybody's so nice.
Well, it's ironic because, even when you mentioned scripture, I think at the beginning of this interview, what they said about the Bible and like reading Bible and preparation time and all that, like the Bible says that, everyone is sinful. So like even if you go into a like whether you believe what the Bible says or not, that's what it says. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can't escape the sin within yourselves, let alone the sin within the world. So just if I go into this community, I won't have bad people there. That's not possible because they're people. So they're going to be there. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really interesting how they, can twist that. And I've heard it many times where it's like, "Oh, if you just join this and you're with us, everything will be fine." It's like, "Well, actually if I've
Mm-hmm.
read the Bible and it doesn't say that." So it's like, "Oh, so if I join you, because I mean, this is different than your situation, but I did come from a family very dysfunctional home where it was like, you leave this home, this unit, you're anathema to us. You don't do what we
Mm-hmm.
want you to do, you're done."
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "But this is the safe place. Nobody's actually bad here. Your interpretation is all wrong." And you're like, "No, actually, you're wrong. I'm not." And it's crazy how, and I think that's the thing that saddens me about this, because it's like there is nothing about anyone that I've met yet in life where I'm like, there is nothing I can not like about you. Like, there's usually something I
Mm-hmm.
can like about everybody. If you really think about it, there's something. But when it comes to this decision where it's this manipulative, like, this group is perfect, you join this group, we're all perfect. You leave this group, you are now out there and you're untouchable. It's like, there's something wrong with that. There's also something unbiblical about that. And so I'm just so sad that you had to go through that. And for so many years, I mean, the trauma you experienced and the religious trauma, as well as just the hurt from people. And I mean, it's just such a devastating story. And now, and I'm thinking to myself in my brain, I'm like, how many times, it's like you walk in. And I mean, I know if I interviewed someone from the 12 tribes, and that's another thing, is how many people in the 12 tribes have just lived their life always that way. So, like, if I interview them,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to think they're doing anything wrong. They're going to be like, this is just my
Yeah.
life.
And there's super wonderful people in this
Yeah.
organization. Like,
Well,
it
it's
wasn't
just,
like everybody was just a monster, and of course they would
right.
never have joined. Like, there's legitimately, like, genuinely
Yes.
nice people there. People are always surprised. Like, I've met 12 tribes people and they're so nice. Well, yeah, they are so nice. And the thing you were
Yeah.
saying about like being perfect there, once you're there, it's like your goal is to be saved. So we
Hmm.
never thought that we were like perfect there. We were the ones that were trying to like own our iniquities and be in salvation, and cut off our wrong. Like, so much of life was about that.
Mm-hmm.
They actually celebrate Yom Kippur, which is like the Jewish Day of Atonement, and it is all about self-reflection and thinking of your wrong ways and your sins and your iniquities. So they're not perfect yet. They're thinking they're going to attain this perfection through the salvation, and that the circumstances that you go through in day-to-day life in the community, that's your salvation. Whatever you're going through, our Father has orchestrated those
Hmm.
events to show you some kind of sin in your life. So
Hmm.
it's hard there, because you're never justified to suffer, because any suffering is, you brought it on yourself. Like, okay, so what sin is our Father? You're unhappy with this aspect of your life. Well, what sin is our Father trying to expose in you?
Right.
So yeah,
Wow.
it's a lot going on mentally there. It's exhausting.
I'm tired. How long is this? I'm like, this interview's a bit. It's only been an hour. It's been an hour,
Yeah.
right? That we've like,
Yep.
and I'm tired. I want to go to
Yeah.
sleep, take a
Yeah.
nap. I'm like, oh my
It's like,
gosh, this poor woman. I'm just like listening to her story and I'm drained. I'm like,
yeah.
what? um, well,
Yeah.
listeners, please. I mean, as you can see, like, there's just no way to talk about her entire story. Obviously, like, what they did to get out of, what life was like afterwards. I mean, that's probably a whole new podcast
Mhm.
episode. Like, please do look it up, and it's on Amazon. It's on,
Mm-hmm.
if you just
Yep.
type in her name, it pops up on Google right away as the first thing is her
Yep.
book. All Those
All
Who
Who Believe.
Believe.
Yep.
All Who Believe. Thank
All
you.
Who Believed, a memoir like from the 12 tribes. Yeah, it might be, I mean, depending where you live, it might be in your, like, not everyone wants to do Amazon, but, local bookstores can order it. Some libraries have it,
Yeah.
barnesandnoble.com. But yeah.
Yeah. Man. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a
Yeah.
gift to
Thanks.
talk with you. And
Thanks for
thanks
having me.
for rehashing all this again. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, don't be sorry. I put it out there for a reason, and I want to reach anybody that I can help. If people have relatives in the 12 tribes, I'm would love to connect and answer questions. I that was my one of my reasons of writing this, is that when I joined the community, there was very little out there at that time, and certainly
Yeah.
there wasn't any like memoir of somebody that had been there. So that was part of my thinking, was like, have some source of information out there that can help somebody make a more informed choice than what I made at the time, because I
Yeah. Well, I
didn't
mean,
have any of the.
you were the first memoir I came across on this. I don't know. I didn't know anything about them again. And I was just looking at memoirs to read or to look at that would be interesting,
Yep.
and came
Yep.
across yours and thought, well, I live down the road from a 12 tribes community and would
Yeah.
nice to know more about it.
Yeah, I probably know some of them. I'm sure I know some of those people down the road from you.
I guess I should stop in next time and be like, hey, I interviewed I guess I would have to say your Jewish version of your name. What was it? Tamara? I'd have to
Tamara.
Tamara.
Tamara. Yeah. Yeah.
She is checking in. How's stuff going, you know? Anyway, thank you
I
so
don't know. I
much.
mean, some of them know I wrote a book. I don't know how many of them know I wrote a book,
We'll bring
but
copies to them. We'll be like, hey guys,
oh, oh
come
my
for
goodness.
freedom. Come on out. We can all do podcast interviews of all of you guys, and we can all like just new life. Yeah.
Right.
Well, anyway,
Right.
thank you again. Please
Yeah.
have a good night
Thank
and a
you.
good
Yeah,
dinner.
you as well. You as well. Thank you.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.